Welcome to Wild Rose Haven, where we're doing it ourselves.
Alright, so I am here doing my first doorknob install on my own with the Kreg setting tool. That's what I call it. My husband has. Mr. Rose has a name for it. And as he says, it's the Kreg setting tool for the knobs and handles. So I am trying to install this, and I did what my husband said, followed his instructions. But the only thing is that I didn't know exactly which drill bit to use. So I went with something a little bit smaller. And the one that I used that was just a bit smaller was not big enough for the screw to go through the back end, so I can screw it into the knob to put them together. So I'm going to go one drill bit up higher, and hopefully it's the right size for it to slide through, and I'll be able to install this on my own. We shall see. So I will try it and see it. I went ahead and I made the hole just a tiny bit bigger. And the other thing that my husband taught me, and a bit of common sense, is that if you're not quite sure about the drill size, just always go a drill bit smaller, because you can always go bigger from there, right? So there you go. It slipped right through. Now I can go ahead and finish the application of the door. All right, I think I did it successfully. So on my own. So yeah, it wasn't too hard to do. Fortunately, he had all the measurements set up, so I just had to follow the measurements that he already set. And now I can continue doing the rest of them. Alright, so what do you do if you end up drilling a hole in the wrong spot? Oh my goodness! Well, you hope you have enough room on your knob, applique that we have here, to be able to cover the hole that you need to adjust. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move the hole. Unfortunately enough, there is enough room to put the knob in the correct place, and the applique, fortunately enough, will cover the hole on the front side of the cabinet door. But on the other side of the cabinet door, I'm going to have to make sure it's filled, and then I'll have to repaint it, which is fine because it'll be easy to cover that up and fill it from the inside, and it won't be seen, of course, once I'm all done. But that's what I can do for now. So if you happen to run into that problem, or if you have this sort of knob or cabinet hardware that you have for your cabinet door, this particular hardware will cover enough of a gap of about, it's about a quarter of an inch space there. So that's a yay. Yeah, because otherwise that would kind of not be too good. But fortunately we have the room, and I'm going to go ahead and correct it and then go from there. Alright, so just in case you had a question and were wondering if you could be able to sort that out, how do you sort that out? You just go ahead and you can get some wood filler from the other side if you want to. You don't need to fill this side because the applique will cover it. If you happen to not have an applique, then you're going to have to make sure you put wood filler on this side for sure, and then probably have to paint it over and all of that before adding the hardware, depending on what type of hardware that you have for your cabinet doors. Okay? Alright, a couple of other notes I'd like to go ahead and add right now while I'm at this point of suggestions and little tips on what I found out when I was applying or using the Kreg hardware template. Is to make sure, this is one of the mistakes I had made, is to make sure that you are using the guide here, that the guide is butted up nice and tight on the side of the cabinet door, and that when you clamp it, because I ended up doing that with my first couple of doorknobs, is that you make sure that the clamp does not move the template guide out of position where it could like lift up like just like that, and then you end up being like I was off about a 16. So it wasn't too big of a deal. And you can go back and, you know, there's enough space and room where you can go ahead and re-drill that hole if you need to. Or, fortunately enough, with these cabinets, because they were hand made and hand turned out, that there was enough variances with each of some of the doors that, you know, they pretty much, even with the right measurements, they still looked a little bit off a little here and there because of the gap between the router marks on the doors. So, you know, yay, they're handmade, but also yay, it kind of gives you a bit of a tiny bit of the variance in how the doors will be measured out. So that's just another thing to check out if you have handmade or factory-made doors, that, you know, you have to put that into consideration too. All right, so that's the only other thing I wanted to make sure I had suggested to you as far as what I learned with using the Kreg template, the door guide for putting on your hardware, drilling out the holes to put on your hardware on your cabinet doors, is just to make sure that it is set nice and tight up along the edge of the door, that the guides are set. There's guides on the back here, so that this guide here, the lip of that, is set up along the door's edge, and has not moved out of the way once you clamped it. All right, and that was it. So now on to repairing this little mismeasurement here on the door and getting the hardware set in the proper place, and then getting these doors hung up. Okay, another tip that I have for you is that some of this particular set of hardware came with the washer here that goes on top of the screw head that goes, and the screw comes in this way to connect the knob, right? So it's nice to have this little washer because it gives a bit of cover for the back end and support for the back end where you drill the hole, and if there's any bit of a tiny bit of blowout or what have you from the screw, from the drill, that it helps cover that up. So you don't really have to go in and repair that, or unless you really want to, but it's just a good way of being able to just give that support there, and also cover any of the blowout that happens with the drill. And the other thing too is when you place your mark on your door, like how we were using the idea of the tape that I came up with, just make sure that you put the tape out far enough to where when you're adding, you use your drill guide, that you can, one, do it to be able to have it far enough to where you can find your mark, and let me see, there it is, mark, and then set your guide. Otherwise, if it's too far, you won't be able to find the mark. And it's right here. The mark is right there. So make sure you put it far enough out. See, I still didn't put it far enough out to where you can find that mark easily and put the guide right on the mark, no problem. All right, so that's the other thing I would suggest. And I think that was it. I think that's all I remembered having to tell you is about the washer, yes, and placing the tape correctly for the mark. And that would be good. I think that's all the things that I could think of that I kind of ran into for my first time using this particular template here to set your doorknobs or handles, because it works well. It works for handles too. On your cabinet doors. So that's the only thing I can think of so far that I've come across that kind of I ran into a bit of an issue, and making sure, of course, that you set this to where you don't have a variance. You can have it centered correctly once you make your center mark measurement and set it on your guide, that it actually does set. Because even though you have it set here on your guide, you can still have it come off just a little bit once you add the pressure of the clamp. And the clamp can just, I tell you what, it's just like it just rocks it just enough sometimes. And if you're going, you're just hurrying up and going through it, that you're not paying attention, that you can get things off center, just slightly off. And depending on how, how anal you can be about it, either the variance is going to be a big deal or not, or depending on depending on the trim or the decoration that you have going on your doors, it's going to really show a big difference in the amount of play that you have. Then you might have to make adjustments or be careful when you're setting your knobs more precisely. All right, so that's it. That's all I have for you right now, and I think I can continue on. So now I've found the spackle, and this should work. It's just to help, fill in little holes like this one here, or little scratches or marks, depending on what project you have going on. But I'm going to use this to fill in the hole on the back side of my my cabinet door here on the inside. And the one thing that you have to kind of make sure to do is find out if depending on if you're using a washer or not, or what type of screw head you have, or whatever you're using to apply the hardware of your cabinet to, depending on the size of it, is if you have enough room once you add this on to do the repair with it or do it without it. In this case, I have to do the repair, fill it in before I put the screw on, and go ahead and sort that all out. Now I can go ahead and put the screw on right now, and just so I can get the door hung and all that stuff, and have the spackle go and fill in and dry out, and then come back later on and then paint it back in, which is more likely what I'm going to go ahead and do, because I have other doors that I got to get done, and so I need this cleared out of here so I can continue on with my project and get my project finished within the timeline I gave myself. So so just to kind of get moving things right along. But before I do that, I just want to go ahead and apply the spackle in the back side here of where I'm going to make the fix and repaint it, and what's the part that you're going to actually see. I might just go ahead and, just for giggles and everything, just fill on this side, just to keep it filled in and stop it from any kind of problems of moisture and all that stuff on this end as well. Even though it's being covered by the applique of the hardware, I feel like I'll just be where we're at and the temperature, the amount of humidity that we have in our area, that just to kind of give a little bit more life to the wood here and help with any kind of extra mold or moisture issues, to help expand, cause the wood to expand and contract, what have you. I'm going to go ahead and spackle this side too. So even though it's going to be covered, why not? It's not going to really hurt much of anything. So that's what I'm going to do, and move on to getting these doors. So just to show you how I use the spackle here to fill this hole in, I just put a little bit here on top and just kind of press it in the hole like so. And what's nice about this particular one is that it's supposed to, you don't have to worry about sanding it or none of that stuff. You just put it in, it shouldn't sink. Oh, I guess I can put a bit more in there. And wipe it clean and you're all good. You're ready to go. You're ready to rock and roll. Alright, so I need to add just a little bit more to fill in that hole. Alright, you can see the hole is all filled up. All I gotta do is just give it a nice little wipe to smooth it all down, and we'll be ready to rock and roll once it's all dry. And I love this stuff because you don't have to worry about sanding it once you fill the hole like other ones, and it shouldn't sink on you or any of that. So you can just let it set and then go ahead and paint it, and you're ready to go. All done.
Y'all come back to Wild Rose Haven, where we're doing